Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And I try not to make bad jokes, but I can't help myself. So this morning we got Adam Thal, and he's going to tell us about his love. So that's my bad joke.
I was going to say.
I'm sure you've never heard that one before. So I'm going to introduce Adam first of all, and then we'll get into the interview. But normally I just introduce, and I'm going to read it because there's so much to tell with Adam. He's the founder and CEO of the Star Film Company. Adam is someone who proves that creativity and business discipline don't have to live in separate worlds. They can combine into creating something exceptional. He's the founder and CEO of the Star Film Company, and he's a seasoned film producer with over 2 decades of experience, turning stories into powerful, globally recognized content. His journey actually began as a young boy filming family holidays, and already then he saw the world through a storyteller's lens. And when we fast forward to today, Adam has produced over 600 television commercials and more than 50 music videos, working with global brands and world-class talent. His work has been showcased on some of the biggest stages in the film industry, including Cannes and Berlin. And he has played a role in projects that have not only won awards, but have moved people and audiences around the world. He was executive producer on the Academy Award nominated The Last Ranger. He helped guide the movie The Heart is a Muscle, and that was a huge success, and brought to life the powerful documentary Rise, which is a Sia Khaleesi story. And that won an award at Tribeca Film Festival, which you might not know, not being in the world, but that's a huge accomplishment. His series Go went on to become Netflix's #1 show in South Africa and broke into the top 10 in multiple countries. But beyond the accolades, what really sets Adam apart is how he thinks about film, not just as art, but as a strategic business. He's passionate about ownership and building long-term value through storytelling, and about taking South African stories onto the global stage. His journey hasn't been without its challenges, from personal loss of a partner in the business to rebuilding and scaling a business. But that's precisely why we want to listen to him and learn the lessons from him. So today we're not only going to be talking about film, we're talking about creativity, entrepreneurship, strategy, and what it really takes to build something meaningful in a competitive global business. Adam is first going to talk around his own personal story, and then through that going to share with us the lessons that maybe we can use in business to learn and be strategic about it. Adam, I know you were born in Zimbabwe and your family left with almost nothing. I was actually talking to your parents earlier, and they said that they left with a car and a trailer and just brought, that's all they could bring from Zimbabwe. And they built a successful business, which you then, I think, learned from. So if you can maybe just take us from your early years, in fact, that and then going to school, and how did you discover the film industry and how your family influenced your choices?
Thank you, Dave. So, as Dave said, I was born in Zim, and we moved as a family in 1986 to Johannesburg. We, as Dave said, came in a car, whatever we could fill in the car, and we moved to Joburg. And for the first year or so, I stayed at my grandparents' flat in Killarney. And so from a youngster, I watched my parents come with nothing from Zim and build a business that eventually employed over 150 people in the manufacturing space. And as a kid, you don't realize, because I was always privileged with what I felt I wanted or needed. I was never like I never felt like it was hardship or that we couldn't afford anything or do anything. So unbelievable parenting, I guess, to be able to give my sister and myself that opportunity. When we came to Joburg, I went to Fairways Primary School, along with Dana over here. And it was at Fairways when I first got my experience of a guy that came to introduce the video camera to us. Back then it was these big bulky video cameras, but that immediately caught my attention and I was intrigued with how you can tell these stories through video. So he gave us a crash course in the camera and in operating it. And I think that was actually one of the moments that got me hooked onto a future path into this industry, which I took with me into high school, where I went to King David Linksfield. And King David had a extramural, I guess, that was called Glance, which was a TV network that was headed up by the late Gary Bloch. And through my kind of experience with the camera from Fairways, I continued that at King David, helping create Glance TV for my 5 years of high school. And that taught me storytelling, that taught me how to edit, that taught me the basics of the film industry, which kind of got me hooked completely into the game. Also at the time, my parents got me a video camera. So as you said in your intro, I used to film everything at home. I used my sister, my dog, everything as characters, and family holidays. I was the pain filming everything on the side. I think, so that was my schooling. Obviously in our community, you feel you want to go into business, and the film industry at the time was kind of more a hobby than a business. So like any young Jewish kid, I wanted to go into filmmaking, but my parents suggested I get a degree to fall back on, just in case, because the creative space is very kind of fickle. So I enrolled in electrical engineering at Wits, because I loved computing, I loved IT and that kind of thing. And I got a scholarship for that. And I put myself through it for a good 9-10 months of first year and realized that I really don't care that X plus Y equals Z and that you have to prove it. I wanted to tell stories. And it was thanks to my parents that they said, we can see you're not enjoying it. Why don't you follow your dream? So I got out of that course and for the remainder of the year went to work as a cameraman for Supersport. So I filmed live rugby games, I filmed boxing fights, and I absolutely loved it. And the next year after the film school, the course became a degree, and it was a BA degree that was being offered. So I thought, let me enroll in AFTA. I'll then get my degree to fall back on, but I can also fulfill my journey. So I joined AFTA the following year and did a 3-year degree with an honors year, 4th year. And I think the biggest thing from film school is not what they teach you, but finding your colleagues, learning the game, and being able to implement it into your own journey. And so it was a very practical course. So we made short films, we made music videos, we did all that kind of stuff. And myself and my future business partner were vying for Top Student of the Year award in our 4th year. And so we decided, instead of competing, why don't we try start a business together in the game? And so in our 4th year, we actually started the business. And I'll never forget the moments we were actually doing our own business and then counting our profits in our lectures. And it was quite an incredible moment. And the two of us created the business and thought we'd give it a bash. And so the Star Film Company was born in 2003. And 23 years later, we're still in business, creating award-winning TV series, films, documentaries, and commercials.
So when you started the business, there's a sad story around it. You say we're still in business, but Ryan's no longer with you. If you can maybe go through that and how do you handle that? But what did you start off doing, and what made you successful that you could grow upon that?
So as I said, we started in 2003, and it was myself and Ryan Poole, and we were two producers. And so the producer's job is obviously to go out and get as much work wherever you can, whatever you can. So we were looking for commercials, we were looking for music videos, we were looking for marketing videos, anything we actually could get proceeds from. One of the reasons we started on our own was neither of us wanted to go in and become a junior at someone else's business. We were both kind of entrepreneurial and wanted to create our own name and our own kind of plans. So we were quite successful in that space at the time. But then in 2007, Ryan passed away sadly in a motor accident. And I'll never forget the moment his roommate phoned me at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning to share the news with me. And that was like one of the biggest moments where it was like, oh my God, now what? So it was a turning point in the business where I was like, do I close down? Do I go and work for someone else? Or do I continue in Ryan's honor and in his name? And I decided on the latter. At that time, we were moving slowly into commercials because the film industry wasn't a viable business at the time. I didn't want to do long form because I didn't want to be that guy begging for coffees in Melville on the side of the road. So commercials was the viable business side of it. And so once again, through the people I met at AFTA and colleagues of Ryan's and myself, I brought on a director, Tristan Holmes, who was also a student a few years below me at AFTA. And I brought him on because he was firstly a creative genius and had an incredible reputation as a director. And so we decided we're going to take this on as a producer-director team, because ultimately in the commercial space, the jobs are won by the director and his or her vision of the board, of the script. And so Tristan joined me, and we continued the business, creating commercials and music videos. And 23 years later, Tristan is still is my partner and still one of 10 directors that we have at Star. And we are still doing some of the top commercials in the game, winning awards around the world, and most recently ranked in the top 3 film production companies in the country, winning Grand Prix and Gold Awards in Cannes, at the Loeries, in the US, the D&AD Awards. So that's the commercial side of it.
So when, in the early days, when you went and you were selling to film the commercials, how would you do that, being maybe unknown? What did you do that enabled you to win the script, or they gave you the contract rather than somebody better known?
So it's a bit of a two-part answer. The main answer is trust. In the commercials game, you're dealing with big budgets, considering they're only 30-second spots or 60-second spots. You're dealing with things up to 15, 20 million rand for one production. So the trust factor is a big thing. So I needed agencies and clients to be able to gain my trust as Adam and as a company. But then also from the creative side of things, you're only as good as your last job. And so we had to make sure every project we delivered the highest standards possible and the best quality, from a creative point of view, from a production point of view, and brought the project in on time and on budget. And there's a lot of luck in the industry. And I remember the first big opportunity we were given was by a creative director that just kind of wanted to nurture these two youngsters in the game. And he gave us a shot at a Coronation investment commercial. And that was our kind of breakthrough moment into the big time boards. Before that, we were doing all these small jobs and music videos, just building our showreel. So it's all about showreel at the end of the day in that space. And once Coronation came out, it became one of the most spoken about pieces. And that got us our first kind of reputational credentials. And we went on with that commercial to be the #1 company at the time and won a D&AD award, a Cannes Lion, and the Lurie's Grand Prix with that commercial. And as soon as other agencies see this happening, you build your reputation like that.
So do you remember what that commercial was? And then once you explain what it is, how did you come up with the concept? What's the creative process of getting there?
That was a very different process, and I very clearly remember that one. A lot of the time, ad agencies come up with a script. So they build the script around the campaign for the client for the year or for 3 years, etc. And they give you the script and you turn the script into visuals. But this one specifically, the ad agency gave us a blank canvas and said, we want to shake the investment banking world of commercials, of marketing, and flip it upside down. And at the time, all the investment banking commercials were these like love story moments, or over time, if you wait for things to mature, you'll become successful. And this one was like, no, work harder now, do your thing now, and basically just do it. And so we did it. It was a montage of people in everyday life working hard at what they do. From the cattle farmer to the fisherman on a boat in Hout Bay to a successful businessman in his boardroom. And it was a montage of all these scenarios that showed people gritty, getting their hands dirty, what they do after hours, because that's also very important in being a success, not just in your 9 to 5. Work hard and we'll then help you, back you, kind of like the Ortjet model.
Okay, right.
Yeah. And that was the commercial, that was the spot. And from there on, we went to kind of doing multiple ads with Tristan, and then building more and more directors within our business, creative directors.
So you said trust is important. One, how did you build that trust, and how did you convince them that you're going to shoot this commercial? Because everything is storytelling, but a commercial is storytelling in only 30 seconds. So how did you build the trust, and how did you go through the process of saying, this is what we're going to do that is different to everyone else?
It's a tough question, because we built the trust from other jobs that we had done, showing that we can do this kind of thing. But I think ultimately the idea that we presented to them as a team, they fell in love with, which allowed us to get them to have faith in us. We were also go-getters. So we decided we're going to put everything into this one job. So the value add that they got out of it as well at the time was tremendous. It was, at the time, probably a 2 million rand commercial, which for us, we felt we've hit the big time. And we probably gave them about 3.5 million rands worth of value in the commercial. So it's the value add, it's I think all of it in one. But that moment of them awarding us the job was part luck, part drive, part passion, part quite a few things. And I think everyone in their business journey needs that opportunity of someone to back you, someone to believe in you, and someone to take a risk on you, I guess.
So earlier when I spoke to you, you spoke about having mentors in your life, which is somebody backing you. And I think you mentioned you had 3 main mentors in your life. You could take us through the story of those mentors and what they meant to you and how they helped you grow us into where you are today.
Cool. So yeah, I have 3 very important mentors. One of them I haven't actually met, but I feel so close to his story that I feel like we're best friends. And each of these mentors have come at different parts of my business career, parts of my journey. So ultimately, my first mentor is my father. Just being able to see his journey in life, how he did for his family or does for his family, and how he created a successful manufacturing business with my mother, and always has time for his family. And so in business, every time I feel I'm at a hurdle, one of the first people I go to is my father, who kind of helps get me out of it. I remember in high school, I always wanted to be entrepreneurial. So in high school, I created a computer business where we actually built computers at the time, these big desktop computers, and sold them to people. And one guy put in an order for 20 computers, and we were like, wow, this is incredible. Long story short, it was a scam. And we started building these things, and then we realized the guy actually isn't going to pay us. And so my father came to the rescue with helping me get out of that one and giving me the legal advice, giving me the business advice. And yeah, that business lasted about 3 months. But I managed to get out of it unscathed with a bit of a war story behind it. But so the first mentor is definitely my father. I still rely on my parents today. When I hit some kind of brick wall, they're always the first to help get me out of it. The second mentor, who I say I haven't met yet, but I've been very close to meeting him. He was at the Oscars when I was there as well. Is a guy, Jerry Bruckheimer. Jerry Bruckheimer is one of the biggest, most successful Hollywood producers globally. And he's a proper mogul in the industry. Created blockbuster films from Top Gun to Bad Boys to The Rock to Con Air to multiple award-winning films. And he's more a role model than a mentor. And what we always loved when Ryan and I started the business is Jerry Bruckheimer started his company from scratch with his late business partner, Don Simpson. And they were called Bruckheimer Simpson Productions. And Don Simpson was always the mad party animal, drugging, jawling, doing these things. And Jerry Bruckheimer was more the kind of straight, business-orientated, we're going to go out and do this. Don Simpson passed away tragically in an accident. And so Ryan and I, well, before Ryan passed away, obviously, believed we were the Bruckheimer Simpson duo. And then Ryan passed away tragically in an accident. So Jerry Bruckheimer has always been my drive that he continued his business without Don Simpson and grew it triple, if not more than that. And so when I decided to do it in Ryan's honor, or continue my business in Ryan's honor, it was the Jerry Bruckheimer kind of angle. And then my third mentor, who's been an amazing figure for me in pivoting my business into the long form space, is a guy, Avi Lerner, an Israeli-American film producer, who I was fortunate enough to meet when we shot a big Investec commercial in Bulgaria. So we went out to Sofia in Bulgaria to shoot at these enormous studios for an Investec commercial. And he happens to own these studios. At the time, he was at the studios filming one of his big series, one of his big film productions. And for whatever reason, he took a liking to me, and I sat at his office nearly every day for a good hour or two, just listening to his stories, talking about my journey, and seeing how I can make things work better for me as a businessman. And one of the biggest things that I learned, or one of the biggest frustrations that I learned so this was 2017 that we went to shoot it in Bulgaria. So from 2003 to 2017, one of the biggest frustrations is when you shoot commercials, they give you a budget, you go out and shoot the job, but you don't own anything. So you have directors who work for you, you have a budget that they give you, but ultimately a director can leave anytime, and you don't own anything. The client ultimately owns the footage that you go blood, sweat, and tears to make. And so through my journey, I've had quite a few people want to offer me to buy me out within the industry or to become partners. And when they come to value the business, it's literally what's in your bank account. And so what Avi Lerner taught me at the time is build your own assets. Go out and create your own films that you own the equity, or at least part of the equity of the projects. So ultimately, you're building your own asset base and becoming a proper business. And that was one of the biggest learning curves for me, because everyone thinks of filmmaking as Hollywood studios that give you $100-200 million, and you go out and make Superman, or you go out and make Titanic. And once again, the studio owns that project, so you don't own it. And what I loved about Avi Lerner is he didn't ever walk a red carpet. He believed B-grade action films was a business model that he followed through. And no one knows of Avi Lerner. Even people in our industry don't really know him. But he created Jean-Claude Van Damme. He created Steven Seagal. He created Chuck Norris. And he created all these B-grade, I call them B-grade, but they're not B-grade films, but lower budget, micro-budget films that he funded himself or got backing to help fund, did them on the smallest budget possible, created these action films, owned them, and licensed them out to broadcasters. There weren't streamers at the time, but distributors, broadcasters, and they pay you to license the project for a certain amount of years. It then comes back to you, and in perpetuity, you continue licensing and earning off the projects, and ultimately building an asset base of projects. And Avi Lerner has probably about 300 films in his library of assets, and probably about 2 years ago sold half his business for $500 million to a Chinese conglomerate. And I was like, this is a business. And so besides for him taking me under his wing at the time, he taught me a great business skill on how to pivot my business into a proper business, as opposed to just a passion for making audiovisual projects. And so I came back to Joburg after that learning curve and was kind of blown away and wanted to implement this model into my game. And so what I decided is, with the proceeds from, or the profits from our commercials that we were making at the time, that I would build my own film fund, put the money from each project into a separate account, and when I had enough, would go out and make my own long form projects using the talents and skills of my team within Star. And that ultimately got me into the long form space, which ultimately got me to be an Academy Award nominee and award winner in the long form space. And on the road to owning my own IP and building my own library in my business, which currently, to cut a long story short, I have 6 films out being licensed, 4 of them on Amazon Prime, 1 TV series on Netflix, a documentary on ESPN and Apple, and 2 films this year that we're finishing up, that Netflix have already offered us a license fee for, and 1 film that we're shooting end of this year, alongside all the commercials that we're still shooting and still putting the money into our own film fund. I do use investors, private investors, to help me on the bigger projects, but majority of the time we focus on what's called the micro budget film space, which is up to about 8 million rand production budget.
So most people are uncomfortable to say that they've won this award and that award. So I'm going to ask you to be uncomfortable a little bit, because you mentioned a few of the awards. If you can take us through some of the awards that I know that you're one of the few South Africans that's actually been Oscar nominated. And then besides that, once you've taken us through that, can you take us through the process of, you've got an idea to do something? Do Netflix approach you and say, please do this, or do you approach them? What is the process? And using that also in conjunction with what you've said, how do you do that process and still own 50% of it?
So there's different models of filmmaking out there. A lot of the time, Netflix or some of the other streamers like Apple, Amazon, Showmax commission you to make a film. So they put out a request for proposals, you send in a script or an idea, and if they like it, they'll give you a budget for you to go out and make it. Now, we didn't want to rely on that method.
Do you own some of that when they do that?
No, no. And that's exactly why we didn't want to rely on that method, because it's very frustrating in the game when you have your own idea and you're relying on someone else, and then once they're on board, they turn your idea into their own vision. And once again, it's like a big commercial. You go out there and shoot and you put all your heart into it, and they own it. So why Avi Lerner became such an influential role is he was like, don't rely on anyone. Trust yourself, trust your instinct, trust your business skills, and go out and make the stories you want to make for the audience, knowing the industry and the business side of it. And that's what I love about micro budget filmmaking is I have people coming to me with ideas, and I know the market globally, locally, continentally, and what's selling at the time. And we trust our own stories. Also, if I like the idea personally, I feel let's back this one. And these projects, because I put my own equity or my own finances into it, I maintain the equity split of how it's negotiated at the time, making sure that a minimum of 50% is owned by myself. Now, with the streamers or the broadcasters, it's high risk, high return in this model. And so you're putting everything into this project at the time, not having a buyer at the time. But because you trust the kind of angle that each project has, you know that there's always going to be a space for it. Now, the success of a streamer or broadcaster is not about having the blockbuster film. It's about having a bouquet or a range of projects. So you're going to log on to Netflix as an audience member and want to watch one of the big series like Money Heist or like Breaking Bad. But then the algorithms lead you down different paths and you're watching something you've never heard of before. And so they always need material to be a successful streamer. And so these budgets are perfect opportunities, these projects are perfect opportunities to fill their bouquet and ultimately become one of their success stories, which we learned with Go, which was one of our projects. And with Go specifically, it was the first TV series we created. We created it from scratch. We came up with the idea, we wrote the scripts, we got backing because it was slightly bigger than our 8 million rand cap. And by the time we got into edit, we had Netflix knocking on our door rather than us knocking on their door, which was quite a moment for us, that we were given an offer for a license fee of our own project before it was even finished. And I think that's the biggest thing in our business, is not having to rely on them, but them relying on us. And so becoming preferred suppliers of all these streamers and broadcasters gives you the weight to be able to go in there with your projects, knowing that you're going to have the buyer and the kind of platform to share your stories.
And did you notice how he sidestepped the discussion about the awards? Want to take us through?
Okay. Once again, Avi taught me awards don't mean anything. It's just a gold, hopefully a gold man or gold trophy on your desk. But it's always fun being in the industry, being recognized by your peers and traveling the world, walking red carpets. So yes, I've been fortunate enough to be at some of the biggest festivals in the world. Most recently at the Oscars last year. And yeah, that was one of the most surreal experiences for us. Unfortunately, I didn't win the gold man, but it makes you want to work harder to get him eventually. And I will do that. But walking the red carpet with the A-listers of my industry, meeting everyone, one of the most surreal experiences was, sorry to be so descriptive, but standing at a urinal next to Quentin Tarantino. and that was like an unbelievable, where am I moment?
As long as you didn't turn around and face him.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, being at the Oscars was an incredible experience for me. But also that taught me, I'll tell you the other festivals in a moment, but one of the most incredible experiences for me, being at the top award ceremony in my industry as a nominee, and realizing that they don't do anything different to what we do back home. They make movies the exact same way we make movies. They use the same equipment, they use the same locations because they come out here to South Africa to use our locations. And their stories are the same as ours. They have a market that goes to cinema. They have a market that have put their weight into A-list celebrities. And that's the only difference within our industry. So it taught me, no, I don't want to be Jerry Bruckheimer in Hollywood. I want to be Adam Thal in South Africa. And I want to make South African stories because I believe that we are a population of so many various kinds of people. We have so many stories to tell locally. Let's tell our local stories to the world. And that's the kind of platform that I want to play in. And so I can still get to these festivals and award ceremonies, as I've proven, but with our own stories and our own talent. And so to go back to your question, my first film, The Fragile King, was an award winner at the South African Film and Television Awards. It also won at Clermont-Ferrand in France, and it was a shortlist at the Venice Film Festival. After that, I'm not going to go through every project, but The Last Ranger, our film about rhino poaching, was an Academy Award nominee, as well as won multiple awards around the world at smaller festivals. The Rise, the Sia Khaleesi documentary, won the main award at the Tribeca Film Festival, which is in Manhattan, and also considered one of the top 5 film festivals in the world. One of my other projects, Under the Rainbow, won in Cannes at the Cannes Film Festival. And most recently, The Heart is a Muscle was an award winner at Berlinale Film Festival, and was officially selected as South Africa's entry to the Oscars. So I was potentially an Oscar nominee back-to-back. But what people don't realize is how difficult it is to become a nominee. So you've got to go through a journey of pumping your film, as well as marketing, as well as rubbing people's backs. As there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in our game. So getting to those points is more a relief than more a pat on the back.
And besides all of that, do you have some stories and things that you thought were going to be successful and it was a complete flop? Or has each thing had its own success?
Definitely have a lot of flops that I don't talk about. In the commercial space as well.
Today.
There's a few in the commercial side of it. There's a few that we're very happy to make sure don't appear on YouTube or any of the social media platforms. Or in the commercials game, there's a guy, Brendan Seary, who rates your commercials, and he's got a platform called Orchids or Onions. And you pray you don't get an onion. And when you get an onion, which I've had many, many onions, you try and hide them and let them disappear as quick as possible. In the long form side of it, I most recently do have a flop of a film, which I thought would be a no-brainer to a streamer, and have been rejected by all of them. But I do still believe there's a home for every project. So it's not about giving up once everyone says no, it's about finding the path for that specific project. So I wouldn't call them flops, I'd call them hurdles.
Just looking at it, what if you had to look at your successes and the hurdles, is there something you can see? What's the difference between those that were successful and those that weren't? Is there something distinct, or is it just the hurdles haven't been successful yet?
So every project ultimately comes down to the script. So is the script entertaining? Is the script allowing an audience escapism? Because that's one of the biggest things for me, sorry to digress a bit, is why I love this industry so much is for that hour and a half or 2 hours, it allows a person to go on a journey, escape their real world, be it for good or for bad, because we do make horror films, and just be engrossed in something that tells a different story and allows you to be free from all your worries for those 90 minutes. And that's quite a powerful thing to have. So when looking for scripts or when creating ideas, that's one of the biggest things for me is, does it allow the audience member to go on a journey or relate to a character or just escape their hardship for that moment? And so the most successful projects has all those boxes ticked of mine specifically. But relatable is the biggest thing. So we have relationships with Netflix on a continental basis, but also deals with Netflix globally, just as an example. So when we come up with a script, we now try and work out, is this relatable to a mass market of just South Africa or a global audience? And that kind of shifts the success or failure of the project, because we're building the South African industry and we want our South African audience to relate to this. If the film goes on to win an award at Cannes, it's an award, but it's not bums on seats paying you for that film. And so the biggest thing for us is being relatable to the specific audience of that film. And that's what ultimately gives it the success or flop. But being in the industry 23 years has given us the learning curve on how to make the high quality, low budget project. And that ultimately allows the script to be told in the best way possible.
So I want to give a little bit of a summary or some key points that I've taken from this, and then we'll open it up for questions if anyone's got questions. But before we get there, just from your side, any lessons that you would tell anybody, not specifically in your industry, but in business in general? What should one do and what should one avoid?
So first thing, one of my best quotes, which is, I know, probably one of the cheesiest quotes, from Walt Disney, is if you can dream it, you can do it. And that's one of the most important things for any individual going into a business or growing in a business, is follow your passion. Because my passion as a filmmaker allowed me to create a business out of my passion. And I do believe if you enjoy what you do, you'll be a success in it. There's nothing worse than going to your day job, hating every moment of it, like my electrical engineering journey, just to put food on the table. So I dreamt my business and I did it, thanks to Walt Disney. But also hard work. And business isn't easy. Business isn't always luck. Yes, a lot of luck has to fall on your plate, but you've got to ride through the storm when the storm happens. You've got to be able to get back up on your feet. And I'm going to botch the quote completely, but there's a famous Japanese phrase which says, if you fall down 7 times, get up 8. And that's the business journey for you, or the entrepreneurial journey, is when you fall, it's not failure. Get up and learn the lesson from there. And even though I've been in the production space for over 23 years, I'm still learning on a day-to-day basis. Every project teaches me something new. Every individual I hire teaches me something new. And you employ people that are better than you at their skill, so that ultimately your team of individuals is the A team. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, but just when you said you were going to botch that saying, which you didn't, I thought you were going to say it in Japanese.
Yeah, that's why I didn't.
So Adam, thanks so much for the input and I think the value that we've got from this. For me, what stood out is having mentors in your life. And the first thing was your father, and it's someone who's close to you, that you've been mentored even before you've been mentored. But it's always good to acknowledge and to see that mentorship, because sometimes we don't know that. The second thing that stood out for me is having a mentor that they don't even know that they're mentoring you, like the role model that you said you have, and using somebody who's just out there that can help you learn. And for me, this is what some of the work that we do here is, hopefully mentoring others without even knowing that we're helping others.
I want to just share one quick story that I haven't shared with you. So I'm part of, after having got my Oscar nomination, I was invited to join the Producers Guild of America, which you get a title at the end of your name, PGA. But also I'm one of 3 South Africans that was invited to join the guild. But anyway, part of the Producers Guild is a mentor-mentee, what's the word? Mentee.
Yeah.
Relationship. And the guild match you as a pair. And most recently, they matched me with a mentor figure that I would learn from, who's an American film producer. And I went and did a Zoom call with him. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me that I just mentored him. And the type of filmmaking and the type of work that we've done here mustn't be taken for granted or just, oh, shame, you're a little South African. And that was quite a moment for me, as I went in there wanting to be trained by one of the best, and ultimately I taught him all the lessons.
And I think that's a great saying, is that they say that the best way to learn is to teach. And when you're teaching, you're learning. And when you're learning, you're teaching. So it's, yeah, it's both sides. And then for me, the third mentor that you mentioned was Avi Learner, which I'd like to kind of coin the phrase that your Avi Learner moment, because it changed you from just doing every day on a treadmill to building an asset. And I think from a business point of view, building an asset is really what you want to do. And his name, even Avi, is AVI, which stands for your asset, your value, and the I, the me in it. So I think his name actually, that, and then having on top of that his surname being Learner, I mean, how can you not learn from that? And then I think what you said, and you started off saying, when I asked you, how did you get all this business? You said it's trust. And you were talking about others trusting you. But then you went on to say, when you're making the movies, you've got to trust yourself. And I think to be successful in anything, there has to be trust. But one of the big things we overlook is your self-trust. Trusting yourself that you can fall down 7 times and get up the 8th time. And you said that it's passion, hard work, and luck. And it's all 3 of those things. And we can't control all of those, but we can control maybe 2 of them, maybe the passion and the hard work, and hopefully the luck comes with it. And I think this has been incredible input. Thank you for that. And if I can end off with a quote that you might have heard or not heard before, but if you can dream it. And I just want to thank you so much for your time. We'll open it up to questions.
I've got the skills, I've got the talent, but I don't know what the next step is in order to take this photography and turn it into a business.
My advice, and which I didn't share in part of my story, is I'm just trying to work out the years around it, but I worked for a company called Man-Made Media, and I filmed bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, and I assisted them doing all that stuff. And I think your journey is what you want to make of it. So if you feel photography for these kinds of events is the way you want to do it, I know some extremely successful people in that space that have made a full career out of wedding video, wedding photography, event photography, that kind of thing. But if you feel you want to take it one step further into the commercial or advertising space, you need to go out and find that angle and what makes your photography different to the other guy that's competing with you. We're in a similar space where there's a lot of fly-by-night people. As long as you've got a camera, you think you're a photographer. So it's all about the portfolio, it's all about the show reel, and it's all about the journey you want to take with your photography. So I would never say being a commercial photographer is a better route. It could be a more lucrative route, but it could be a harder struggle to break into. So I feel what you have passion for as a photographer is the route you have to go. And if you love doing barmies and butties and weddings, take those seriously like the Mann brothers did back then with me, and do those to the best of your ability and become the person that everyone wants to book. And I think the biggest thing for me from having gone to a film school is more the people you meet and learning the tools of the trade. So if you've got that skills, I don't believe a degree is going to help you in any way. I believe you have to keep going out there and working to make sure your skills honed to the best of your ability. I think that's one of the biggest things that Avi Lerner taught me as well. And that's why we work in the micro budget space, is private investors are very shrewd with their money. So to be able to give you money towards a project that ultimately has no guarantees whatsoever is a very difficult place to play. So the micro budget space is why we built our own film fund, so that we could be the overall investors on our own projects. But the other projects, like the Netflix series that we did, we pitched to 3 individuals who happened to have a fortune of money, and they once again believed in us as filmmakers more than the project. And with that project, we were able to give them a 280% return within 18 months of their investment, which was unheard of for our industry specifically. And so that once again builds the trust in them. And so their thing to us is now, what's next, rather than us having to open another door and start again. So it is one of the hardest places to play, because investors then do believe, well, there's different types of investors, but a lot of them do believe, I'm giving you money, so I now need a say in what the project needs to look like. Or hopefully they just want their name in lights for when people come to watch the film on screen or on cinema.
What's your favorite movie of all time?
That's a hard one. I've got a few. My best film that brought me into this industry was E.T. E.T. So I watched E.T. and was like, I want to make movies. So that got me into the game. But I have a few films that get me every time. The Usual Suspects, Dark City, and Gladiator are probably my top 3 that show you that you can get emotion out of someone even after having watched it 15, 16 times. And I think each one of those films, and they're all in different genres of filmmaking, each one of them has the stamp of escapism. You can become that character, you can become that hero, you relate to this individual, or you can just watch 90 minutes of aliens in space and say, wow, that just took me to a new level. So I don't have one specific film, but those are my kind of groupings.
As E.T. said, E.T. go home. Thank you very much to all of you for attending, but Adam, especially to you, thank you for what you do and what I know you're going to do, and for sharing that with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that's come, because as a filmmaker, you don't see yourself on the level of these CEOs and entrepreneurs that founded Nando's and founded Sasfin. And so to be able to get people into the room to listen to my story as this random individual is quite a thing. And I appreciate you all coming. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last thank you. We just want to thank Otto 1890, because they're the new sponsors, the new name of sponsoring all of this, and we wouldn't be able to do it without them. So thank you.
Thank you.